When I was 12, my dad once again got custody of me, so I went to live with him. My dad would occasionally go out at night and leave me home alone. I enjoyed it because I felt grown up, no babysitter. I usually had a friend stay over, or my brothers were there, and so it wasn't scary. I also enjoyed being home alone on weekend evenings because it gave me time to catch up on all the latest rated R movies. About 10 p.m., the movie is about halfway over, and there is a very loud knock on the front door. I was too short to use the peephole, so I ask, "Who's there?" A man's voice loudly says,
"You want to buy some candy?"
It was 10 o'clock at night. I reply, "No thanks." 10 seconds go by. I'm leaning with my ear on the door. He beats on the door again, startling me, and I jump.
"Open the damn door!"
"No, go away," I said. He starts cursing furiously. He leaves, but not for long. Confused and shocked, I just go stand in the hallway, listening. The rest of the house is a fortress. My dad was safety conscious, with always checking window locks and doors, afraid of being burglarized. When I would sometimes forget my house key, I was screwed because there was no way to sneak in. We live in a cookie-cutter development in a very safe suburban area, but during the day it was a ghost town. Parents were at work, kids were at school. There were a lot of burglaries, as I recall. I was so shaken with fear when I realized how late it was and he was selling candy. I could not go back to watching my movie. I turned on all the lights and hid behind the couch. I think he's gone. Suddenly the man starts ringing the doorbell repeatedly, for probably a solid minute. I'm frozen with fear, just sitting behind the couch. That was an adult at the door, not some friend or kids playing a joke. He never came back after that doorbell episode. I never told my dad about it either, or my brothers. I don't know why, it was just so messed up that I pushed it out of my mind. As time went by, it seemed to be more like a bad dream. I don't know what would have happened if I had opened that door. This happened about 4 months ago. I was a freshman in college, and at the time I was only 17 years old. To give a little perspective, I am 4'11" and about 110 pounds, very petite and not menacing in any sense of the word. I was home alone, and it was approximately 9 p.m. It was dark outside because it was the winter months. I didn't lock the doors because I was home and I was inclined to believe that I lived in a safe neighborhood, which never had any criminal activity as long as I had resided there. I was alone for the latter part of the day, and my mother had asked me to mop the tiles earlier in the day. I left it till about an hour before I expected her to come home. The tiles are parallel to the front door, and the door is metal with 2 locks, both of which were undone at that time, and a glass cutout in the door, like a 2-way window. So I was cleaning the tiles when the doorbell rings. To be fair, I never answer the door when I'm alone, but the person outside had seen me through the window in the door, and it felt rude to just ignore him. As I step closer, I see a man with blonde hair in his early 30s watching me approach the door. He looked normal enough, so without much hesitation or thought, I pull the door open. The man at first pauses and looks at the knob, and in that moment, I realized that he was puzzled as to why I didn't have to unlock the door prior to opening it. Here's how the conversation went. "Hi, can I help you?"
"Hello, I'm with the phone company. Are your parents home?"
We are not with that company, and my dad is taking a shower right now, so he can't speak to you."
I don't hear any water running. Are you sure he can't come out to speak with me? My company is offering a promotional offer that lasts only till the end of this month."
"No thanks, maybe you can come back tomorrow."
"Well, maybe I can talk to you. How old are you?"
At this point, I'm getting slightly creeped out. Who would be doing promotions so late at night? "I'm 17, I don't think I can help you though." The bill is not in my name or anything.
Can I come in? I can show you the details of our offer, and maybe you can convince your dad afterward to switch to our network.
I'm super freaked out now. I'm sorry, sir, I can't let you in. Please come back tomorrow. At this point, I nearly slammed the door shut. The man doesn't say anything, but doesn't exactly abruptly leave either. I lock the chain slowly so he doesn't hear it, but he's still looking at me with a creepy look through the window. He then waved and walked off the porch. I notice he doesn't have a company car with him. Feeling paranoid, I fully lock up, and shortly after, my mom arrived home. I didn't convey to her anything about what happened. I was worried I would be scolded. The next day, there was a knock on the door, but this time it was the police. The house adjacent to us had been broken into last night, ransacked, and the owner was beaten badly. They wanted to know if we had seen anything, and reluctantly, I explained the previous incident to them. Unfortunately, they never caught the individuals responsible, and the owner of the house moved out soon after. The house is still vacant, and sometimes I wonder, what would have happened to me? This happened 6 years ago when I was 13. During the summer, my mom had to leave us and tend to my grandpa, who had cancer and lived over 300 miles away. It was just my dad, my 16-year-old brother, and I for all 3 months of the summer vacation. My dad worked all day, and my brother Dean went to summer school, which meant I was home alone for a good portion of the day. We live in a fairly safe neighborhood, and I knew always to lock the doors. One day I was preparing to cook the gourmet lunch of grilled peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I was heating up the frying pan when I heard scratching coming from the front door. I turned off the heat and inched closer to the door. I slowly see the doorknob jiggle and slowly turn. Thankfully, the top lock was still locked, but I heard it being tampered with. I quickly ran into the kitchen and grabbed the frying pan. I crawl into our pantry and post a status on Facebook asking someone to call the police and send them to my address. I hear someone enter the room and walk around. They don't really sound like they're doing anything except walking. Then, the footsteps get louder and louder. The pantry door opens and I hit the person in the head with as much force as I could with the hot pan. The person, a man in his 40s, is knocked out. The police arrive a few minutes after this happens. They call my dad and my brother to inform them of what happened. The police offer to take me to the station because I refused to let them leave, and my brother agrees to meet me there. It turns out the guy had a knife in his pocket and duct tape in the other. The police searched his car, which was parked in front of the house, and found rope, trash bags, girls' clothing, another knife, and a single picture of me in the glove compartment. I really don't know what would have happened to me. This story is from the perspective of a 13-year-old girl. It all started when I stayed home from school because I didn't feel good and my parents both worked, so I was alone from about 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. I'd been home alone a lot before, so I was comfortable and knew how to handle myself. Around 1 p.m. I heard a knock at the door. I was feeling very ill, so I ignored it. I also knew it wasn't wise for a young girl that's home alone to answer to a stranger. It knocked again, so I looked out my bedroom window on the second floor, and it's a man standing there peering into the small window next to the door. His truck was parked on the street, and I recognized it as the exterminator. I didn't recall my mom saying he was coming, so I just decided to wait until he left. I go downstairs to get water when I see him roaming around the deck, looking into all the small windows. I knew he was just checking if people were home, but it freaked me out. I, trying not to be seen, slithered into the next room, hoping he never saw. After about 5 minutes, I sneak into the living room and see if the truck is still there. Yep. Our living room has a glass door that leads into the sunroom that's connected to the deck. I turn around, still kind of paranoid he was going to see me, and he's in the sunroom. I was crouched behind a coffee table and he caught sight of my cat, Scooter. He made a face at her and she hissed and growled. That's when I hopped up to tell him he couldn't be there. I made my way to the door and opened it. He said,
Hi, you're Emma, right?
My face went white, and how on earth did he know my name? Yeah, how do you know my name? I said.
I know your parents. Can I come in and inspect?
I stupidly said they were at work. I still was incredibly weirded out that a stranger who I've never seen comes to my house and knows my name. He looked me up and down and said,
I'll come back another time.
All I wanted was for the creep to leave. I shut and locked the door and make my way to my room. He goes back to his truck and gets in. He sits there for a good 2 minutes as I watched from the window, trying not to be seen. He finally leaves. I called my mom and asked if she was expecting the exterminator, and she said no. I hung up, really confused, but I calmed myself down and didn't want to scare myself. When my mom came home, I told her everything. The fact that he knew my name and was looking through the windows. She looked concerned and said she had never called him to our house or anything. When I explained his appearance, she said she vaguely remembered him inspecting our house prior, but not at all did he know my parents, let alone my name. Luckily, he never came back, and I never saw him again. I had been taking stuff out to my car when I realized a strange brown van with no back windows was parked across the street. As I put the stuff in the trunk, the man in the van started making weird noises at me. I turned to see if I could get a look at his face, but his black Giants baseball cap was pulled down really far. Thinking he was just a creepy guy, I flipped him off and went back into the house. About 2 hours later, I went outside to go somewhere and he was still parked across the street. Not thinking anything of it, I hopped in my car and headed to my friend's house. As I was driving, I looked in my rearview mirror and saw the same brown van following me. I turned on a whole bunch of streets and he followed me down all of them. I turned onto the road that my father-in-law lived on and parked, thinking if the guy tried anything, I could just run there and be safe. When I pulled over in front of my father-in-law's house, the van slowly drove by. I looked into the van and the man put his hand into a gun position, pointed it at me, and said bang really loudly. After that, he hauled ass and drove off. Like I said, that was 2 weeks ago. Now, I had always been a little leery of staying home alone. My house had always given me the creeps because of how poorly lit it was. When I was alone at night, I typically just stayed in the kitchen because of how bright it was. I was watching TV on my computer when all of a sudden, I hear a banging on the front door and the handle jiggling. It startled me for a moment until I looked at the time and saw it was around 10 p.m. and knew my cousin was going to be coming home around that time. I got up and opened the door, but nobody was on the porch. I shouted my cousin's name out, but still no response. I called my cousin's cell, and immediately she was like, "Oh hey, I'm on my way home from work right now." Before I could say anything else, there were 3 extremely loud bangs on the door that connected the kitchen and the garage, and the knob shook violently. I slammed the front door closed, locked it, and chained it, and ran for my room. My aunt called me while my cousin called the police, and I stayed under a blanket until my cousin arrived. When she came home and got me, I was led outside to talk to the police. I was trying to explain what had happened, but the officers along the side of my house were distracting me. I walked over to where they were, but one of the police officers held me back. They opened the gate and saw that the door to my garage, which we always have locked, was wide open. All of the officers in the area pulled out their guns and went into the garage, but nobody was in there. Afterwards, the police told me it was probably just some kids messing around, but if I ever get scared at home, to just call them and they'll send someone out. Some time had gone by. About a week later, I was watching something in my living room with my cousin and my husband. As I was passing by the window next to my front door, I realized there was a guy with the same baseball cap as the guy in the van, standing outside on the sidewalk, staring at the house. When he noticed me watching, he immediately locked eyes with me and slowly gave me the creepiest smile I had ever seen. I turned and yelled for my husband to go out there, but when I turned around, he was gone. 3 days after that, I was home alone at night again, telling myself that I was going to be okay. I was baking cookies in the kitchen when I thought I heard a knock on my sliding glass door. My whole body tensed up and I slowly turned towards the door. The lights in the backyard were off and the kitchen ones were on, so the glare on the window made it impossible to see if someone was outside. Everything was silent for a few seconds before someone banged on the door again. I screamed, but felt paralyzed in fear. The person ran on the deck from the sliding glass door to the 2 windows in the living room and started knocking on them as well. They came back to the sliding glass door to knock and started trying to open the door furiously. I finally came to my senses, grabbed my keys, and ran outside into my car. I locked myself in my car and dialed 911. We sold our house shortly after that. I still have a hard time staying home alone, even though I'm 2 states away now.